Whoa, hello. Whoa, doggy. Bounty hunting is a complicated profession, don't you think? 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 Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. This is the Fanatics of Film, and my name is Ben. Just wanted to give my quick analysis on this trailer. It is a damn shame that we had to go through what we had to go through to get here. That's a t-shirt I'm going to make. It's a shame that we had to go through what we had to go through to get here. Really sad that, all these people saying on Twitter saying that Star Wars is saved. Remember what they did. Remember what they did to Luke. Maybe I might, hopefully, anyway, it's just, this trailer is awesome, but it saddens me to the degree of what they had to go through, to what they had to do to Luke to get here, to actually make this happen. We've been clamoring for this stuff for a long time, and they finally, it's like, after all, anyway. As we gaze at the stormtrooper helmets on the ground in the sand, I am reminded of the possibilities of the endless battles that would have taken place in an actual interstellar war. How many battles that may have taken place during the Battle of Endor, and battles occurring after the Ewoks had stormtroopers for dinner. According to John Campea, they are ruthless because they played drums on the helmets of troopers. Yeah, and then there are the evil Ewoks, as discussed at great length on Red Letter Media's most recent time travel theory video about the rise of Skywalker, and as I like to call it, the rise of apathy. This trailer excites me because of what it might be, and the music, particularly a minimalist, nightmarish death squad of electro-pumping machine sounds with orchestral accompaniment that feels like Breaking Bad or Walking Dead, leads me to believe that this show has a particular target, a focus, a predetermined group in mind. This is what we have been waiting for all along, while they ignored us and called us names. This is what we were waiting for whenever anything was announced, when Collider's Jedi Council was brand new, and I scurried home every Thursday evening to curl up with Christian Harloff and John Campea and the gang to speculate on what Disney's amazing plans were, and what would they do next to fulfill our ever-watering appetites for more Star Wars. That isn't what they were aiming for. None of what you see before you is what they were aiming for. From the beginning, they have wanted us out. They have wanted us to leave them alone, allowing them to change Star Wars, to change it into a female brand. As we watch this, I ask you to this one favor. Please, please don't forget. Don't forget all the names they called you. Remember Luke Skywalker. I am not sure of if helmets on spikes is supposed to be scary, but I do know that if there are heads inside of those helmets, or at least if the story alludes to such, then I would be shocked, surprised, impressed, and curious. The very next frame, we are introduced to a ship that could have existed in The Force Awakens, or any other show for that matter. This shot is fantastic, making us feel like we are inside this universe. The overhead wide scope is very George Lucas esque. The spaceport set piece is absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. We see orange and gray all over. The structures are reminiscent of Tatooine, reminding us of where we are. We are in an echo of George Lucas's creation. The suspense is built with the arrival of our adventurer being displayed slowly, with several locations pinpointing. One thing to notice here is that they didn't start with the view of the planet first, which is typical of Star Wars and typical of that. So that was one thing to point out here, which is usually where the scene begins. Usually a scene will start with the planet itself and then the scenery above the planet, etc. Next is an exchange of two items. So next is an exchange of two items. I am not at all sure of what they are. The items acquired by the Mandalorian here are interesting. Two purple, white, kind of blue, or blue-white type of things. Maybe it's blue meth. They are interesting. Two purple, white coins, or blue, white coins, or something like that. It could be blue meth. Our first Turns out Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, and The Mandalorian are all in the same damn universe. Our first appearance of the reawakened star power Carl Weathers was always awesome to me. I loved his role in Predator. He was a key component to that story, and I forgot that he had appeared in Happy Gilmore recently, back in 1996. He was also in Toy Story 4. My most recent favorite cameo of his was in Arrested Development. His banter with David Cross was hilarious in that. Okay, so the very next scene is the same Mandalorian ship flying, or maybe it's a ship that he stole, we're not sure, flying over giant cracks or a series of ravines. This is another beautiful landscape shot. This definitely increases the size of the scope of this. This definitely increases the size of the scope of this. I can tell that Favreau really understands the largeness that George Lucas has always striven for, and all of us embraced. He did it with toys, the Death Star, etc., with the first one and the prequels, and with Coruscant. Without a doubt, the sound design is great, as important as the visual captivation. I stress this immensely. As Pedro Pascal, in his quiet, threatening armor, steps out of the rear door of his ship, I am briefly reminded of Rogue One. This does remind me that they are actually trying to impress the fans somewhat back then, or at least they were back then. Enter Cara Dune, played by Gina Serrano, and the low horns here illustrate the seriousness and the open possibilities that lie before us, with threats in mind. And she has a slightly evil smile that could be interpreted so many different ways depending on the context. The current music that is coupled with this, however, leads us to feel threatened by her. Just even though she's just smiling, she could be smirking, and it could be happy-go-lucky music in the final cut. But since we have the trailer music making us feel all scary and alluring, that it's felt in a very specific way. It's very interesting how powerful the music here is in the scene. It really deters you one way or the other. Of course, our very next scene, hilarious, perfect, and bizarre. One of the dewbacks. The next scene is Nick Nolte as a fearless badass Ugnaught on a dewback. So very cool. Last time we saw these characters, or at least that I saw him, I think was in Rebels. In the current canon that I saw him, they were kind of being their goofy selves in Rebels. But you know, I didn't like Rebels, so anyway, that's another thing. But you know, of course, seeing them in Empire Strikes Back, they were just these frivolous beings that were almost never threatening. But here we see a cowboy version of that, Nick Nolte as a fearless badass Ugnaught on a dewback. This was a cool shot. It will be interesting and hilarious to see Nick Nolte as an Ugnaught. That'll be very funny and interesting. Hilarious, perfect, and bizarre. One of the dewbacks is dead in this scene, so I am sure we will learn how that came about. Perhaps the Mandalorian was on it. Our one and only Pedro Pascal was on this dewback, and maybe got knocked over or something, or maybe shot down or something. Next we have Emily Swallow. I think that's Emily Swallow. Forgive me. I know that she was in Supernatural, or forgive me. Yeah, I think Supernatural. I've never seen that show, but apparently I think I think that's her playing a Twi'lek. So perhaps we can maybe see Ryloth in this series. I would love to see Ryloth. So far we have only seen Ryloth in the Lords of the Sith novel and in the Clone Wars. I would love to get an entire episode on Ryloth, but we probably won't. I know that they're just going to probably stick to desert planets and all that crap, but anyway, I just wish. I would love to see Ryloth. We would get to see perhaps some of the damage that had been done when the Emperor and Vader were marooned there in Lords of the Sith. If you remember, if any of you remember that novel, it was actually just a great book series that was on Ryloth. I always enjoy a good Twi'lek character. I always love Twi'leks in these stories. They bring a unique, cool factor to Star Wars. She gives a fun wink in the scene, and this increases the intrigue that has fermented over the years that I have had for this series, or this type of Star Wars, the Rated R Wars, the Rated R Star Wars. Once again, open huge, which I'm sure won't be, but anyway, I can wish. Once again, open huge wide shots, increasing the size of the scope and the world of this. This is what Star Wars has always been, should be, and was sorely lacking in the sequel saga. Rogue One tended to have a lot more of this. Terror engulfs our two potential victims in the very next scene. A mother and a child being frightened beyond belief. The dread felt here is a mysterious one and captivating, and we love this. Once again, why is Breaking Bad and why were these types of shows so successful? Because there's a real threat there, and there is a really scary villain, a real villain and real fear. Death Troopers lined up in the next scene here. It appears in execution style. Okay, so we keep coming back to the Mandalorian's holster, an orange dipped glove tapping, almost teasing his opponent rhythmically. So, orange dipped glove. I'm sure we'll get into I'm sure we won't know details on the colors of why he is the orange. I'm sure that maybe that plays into the family, maybe the house that he is in, on Mandalore. Of course, speaking of Breaking Bad, our incredible madman menace, Giancarlo Esposito. Who played the Gustavo Fring. We all know of him as the great villain Gustavo Fring, who had brought the house down in Breaking Bad, but he was also an extraordinary villain in Revolution. If you haven't seen that, as a great series, who brought the house down in Breaking Bad, but he also was an extraordinary villain in Revolution. The TV show that was actually, in my opinion, one of the few great things that came out of Bad Reboot. I cannot tell you how glad I am that we get to see him in Star Wars. His blank, destructive scowl that he had always exercised so willingly in Breaking Bad will definitely rise the stakes. This is what we have been waiting for, a real villain, a villain that is scary, and that will threaten us. We need to feel actual fear from these villains to feel threatened, to leap into the role of the protagonist, to take their side, because there's nothing else, there's no other alternative at this point. To feel threatened, to leap into the role of the protagonist. This is absolutely crucial. I am optimistic now that we see him on the side of the Empire, surrounded by Death Troopers. This feels more and more like a cowboy show, screaming, terrifying, unforgiving Western flair. The next scene we see, I can't tell who it is. It might be Pedro Pascal on a speeder bike with someone approaching from the sky in a jetpack. Oh, I love jetpacks. Oh, nighttime with the ATSTs over what looks like a swamp. Like a fence or was knocked over, something that was going on there, some kind of barrier there. Weapons fired in the town square. Again, more threats to the civilians. Weapons fired in the town square, more threats to civilians. Innocent parent and child being threatened here. And that is the second parent and child. So really focusing on like a parents and children being threatened here, which is that's a great way, because you immediately, by seeing that, you immediately connect the two characters. You immediately connect these two. You immediately feel remorse for them, because you see the child, child's fear exploding from their face, and you are immediately on their side and you immediately feel for them. It's definitely a good tool to feel for them immediately. And of course, our IG-88 and the Mandalorian bust in to what looks like a bar or a type of something that we would see in the Clone Wars or in Mos Eisley. Of course, our great friend IG-88 showing up with Pedro, knocking down a door like they own the place. This place is reminiscent of the Cantina in Mos Eisley. All the scum and villainy await. Our first space battle moment when we see the Mandalorian's ship dodging what looks like a smaller X-Wing class ship, however more like something from the prequels. These battle shots are incredible. Wow. The Mandalorian jumps onto an automatic plow machine, and IG-88 delivers shots in all directions. I imagine it would be difficult to hit this droid, considering his thin head. A headshot would be quite difficult. Wow, tons of space cowboy stuff here. Great moves, kind of like cowboys and aliens, eh? Hey, Mr. Favreau. And so for the first line in the trailer, we get Werner Herzog's bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree? I assume we will be probably will be another bounty hunter who will be, you know, the competition. Then, of course, the Carbonite freeze. This is always a nice connection to see as well. And a damn shame, because if this turns out to be, if this show turns out to be that good, I would buy the Blu-ray or the DVD. But it's too bad we won't ever see it in any other capacity than on D+. What a damn shame. So anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Does this give you hope? Does this make you believe that Star Wars has been saved? I don't believe that for a long shot that it's been saved, because they have way too many people who have identity politics on their mind and other things than Star Wars on their mind, writing for Star Wars. So that's my opinion. What is yours? Did you love this trailer? Did you hate it? Did you think it was awesome? I thought it was pretty good, pretty damn good. I mean, it was fun. The music was very, what's the word? Threatening. It was just terrifying and threatening. And I think that's one of the biggest things, biggest takeaways here, and one of the biggest things to recognize is that's what's happening with this, is that it's, Favreau should be allowed to make more Star Wars if this ends up being good. He should be, at the top. I mean, he understands what the fans want. He understands what he wants out of Star Wars, and he tends to want something that's going to make you money, Disney. So if you believe in the future of Star Wars, if you believe in your product and you believe in the fans, if you believe the fans can bring our hearts back, we can. I mean, honestly, you need to really apologize to us, but I know that we're never going to get that. But I do see some hope in this, and I just do feel like hopefully you understand that this kind of grasps what what the fans are looking for. We don't, I mean, like I said before, Luke has to be fixed. If you really want any of this, if you want us to really come back, and you want us to really return and be here with you, and be there paying for your, paying for whatever, paying for anything, then you gotta fix Luke. That's just what it comes down to. You gotta fix Luke. This is great, but it's a damn shame that we had to go through what we went through to get here. Why did we have to go through all that?